Welcome to People Like You. Becoming a successful filmmaker in the Bay Area isn't easy. Producer and founder of 12 Point Productions, Kevin Gonzalez, has been in the broadcast video production industry for over a decade and is here with us today to share his experiences as a Christian filmmaker, as well as tell us about his new documentary project. So don't go away.
Working as a news reporter, and I got out of that business, came up here, and said, okay, I'm actually supposed to be behind the camera.
Welcome back. Kevin Gonzalez is the senior producer and founder of 12 Point Productions, a production company in the San Francisco Bay Area. And he's here with us today to talk about the filmmaking business and about his new documentary. So glad you're with us today. And it's true, being in media in the Bay Area is difficult.
That's an understatement. It really is. When I first started 12 Point, it was interesting. I had a lot of people going, no, it's not going to happen because the competition here is so great.
Yes.
And everyone says, you know, if you just have a camera, you're just jumping out of school. Everyone calls themselves a producer. So how are you going to compete, especially when they actually charge less when they do stuff like that. And it just makes it more difficult when you have a wife and 2 kids. But I said, you know what, I think I definitely feel a calling to do this, and I'm going to go for it. And so 12 Point actually started doing weddings.
Really?
And I started up doing when I came up from LA, working as a news reporter, and I got out of that business, came up here, and said, okay, I'm actually supposed to be behind the camera. And I was a stay-at-home dad, but I said, okay, I need to get back to work. What am I going to do? So I got a hold of some money, bought my first camera, and said, okay, let's go film weddings. And that's how I started in the Bay Area, and then eventually made it into corporate video.
And that was about 10 years ago.
It was about, well, yeah, a little bit more, probably 11-ish or so years ago.
And you are a Christian in media business, which is also challenging to some degree, wouldn't it be?
It is, definitely it is. I mean, you get a lot of shady characters in this business. As you know, it can be extremely cutthroat, and even when you're nice to people, it's just people just gloss right over that, you know.
Right.
Or we really want to produce something well without stepping on the guy behind us or in front of us. And and not to say that every company is like that. By no means, it's not true, but it's pretty prevalent.
Yeah.
And you see it all the time, and it's tough to sometimes not to want to jump into that. And you got to pull yourself back and say, hey, you know what? There's a better way to do it.
Yeah, I'm different.
Yeah.
So why 12 Point?
Well, when I started the company, I didn't want it to be Kevin Gonzalez Productions. I just did because it's like, who's Kevin Gonzalez?
Name.
Yeah, you know,
I mean,
I love my name. It's all good. It's all good. I like my name. But I wanted something that actually honored God.
Wow.
I wanted a name that didn't honor me. And so I sat down and I thought about it. Okay, what do you do? And so for whatever reason, the word 12 popped in, and it was mainly because of, you know, you got 12 guys on Jesus's team. And that's a lot of it. You got the 12 tribes of Israel.
Yes.
And so it was a biblical reference first and foremost. And then it was supposed to be the underlying current of if you have 12 hours in a day and 12 hours at night, you get a complete package, which equals a whole day. So if you hire us, when you hire us, you get a complete package with a good foundation, which is God.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what kind of programs do you produce then at 12 Point?
Well, when I got out of weddings and then got into corporate, our bread and butter is the Silicon Valley. It's .coms, it's biotechs, and that's how we started. And then it moved more into almost 50-50 is nonprofit stuff that we fell in love with, or I fell in love with. Working with the Rotary, working with shelters and things of that nature that actually give back. And so when you produce something like that, the budget's not the same, but the reward is actually bigger. It really, really is, because when you actually produce something that helps a company like that, and you see other people want to jump on board, give their time, and especially give their money to a project that does help, it's pretty rewarding. It's nice.
Okay, and we have a lot to cover here, but I want to touch on that for a moment, because producing is more, there's more to it than putting a story together very quickly. I mean, for instance, you talked about the shelter. So you want to deliver that message and the feeling of that specific organization, right?
You have to, otherwise it's just a slap together commercial. And people feel that, they know that, they can tell the difference. as an organization who cares and one doesn't. So when you go in and you're producing something that is, say for instance, we were in Nicaragua, and we got the gig because it was a Rotary they were building homes in Nicaragua. It was amazing, and I actually speak Spanish, so we got the gig.
Yes.
So I actually didn't produce that one, I filmed it, but I kind of co-produced a little bit because you get down there and you really got to know these people in order to put the story together. And I was fortunate enough to work with an amazing guy named James Reed, who's a multi-Emmy winner. He knows how to write, he's a good guy. And we went down there and we really dived into these people. And the guy who runs the project completely, when he ran his first campaign to raise money, which is why we did the video, he was hoping to raise like $60,000. Yeah. And that's all he wanted to raise, just so he can get down there, build some homes, work it out. But we really fell in love with these people. And we really wrote about these people. And his first fundraising campaign, he raised over $200,000, as opposed to the 60 that he originally thought of. That was his goal. So when you actually jump into a project and really care about what you're producing and writing and filming, it shines through, and the rewards will come in great ways. And we know we got rewarded too, because what we originally had thought that the budget was going to be for us, the guy just dumped more money on us just because. Yeah. And so.
And very rewarding for you.
Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned LA. Tell us about, you went to San Francisco State. Tell us about your career.
So I went to San Francisco State because I thought I wanted to be a hotshot news reporter. I thought I was going to be the next big thing.
Give us a sample.
Yeah, I said, hi, this is Kevin Gonzalez. We're live here in East LA where there is a gang shooting, unfortunately, but we are going to be, all of a sudden, right in the middle of that, a volley of shots went off. So we were down there reporting on this thing. We were getting ready to do a live stand-up. I was practicing. And a bunch of shots went off, and I'm the general news reporter. So you get just the garbage jobs, the garbage reports when you're new. I was there 3 months, and a volley of shots probably went off a half a block. The police ran off, and it's the typical news scene, right? Yes. And I'm like, I wanted to do this? This is where I really wanted to be? I was like, oh my God.
Let me rethink this.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, maybe not. Plus, you know, it was funny. My wife was pregnant with our first kid, and I told her, let's not move down just yet. Let me go down to LA. She was up here. Yes. And I was commuting home every weekend. And after that incident, I said, you know what? I don't think this is where God wants me to be. And it's interesting because before I went, there was that little voice inside that said, hey, don't go. And I was like, no, this is the #2 market in the nation.
Right.
The starting salary
on paper
is great. I've got a kid on the way. And it came back a little. It wasn't screaming. It was just, don't go.
Less than a minute. What called you to media as a career?
I love to tell a good story. I didn't always want to be a reporter. I mean, I went to school late. I went to school when I was 28. And about then, it's like, I said, you know what? Telling a good story that can make a difference, that's really cool. And I didn't really know how to formulate all of that. And I didn't know really where I wanted to be, but that's what got me into it.
And you are an active member of the Christian body as well.
Yeah.
And so what we're going to talk about in the next segment actually combines those two talents, right? And the love for the Lord. Okay, I can't wait. More with Kevin when we return. You made a really good decision on moving back up here.
Oh yeah.
So don't go away.
Documentaries, it's pretty amazing because I wasn't looking for it. I was looking for a good documentary, but this one wasn't it.
We're back with Kevin Gonzalez, producer and founder of 12 Point Productions. Now, you worked in both Northern and Southern California in the industry. Is there a difference between the two?
There is. LA, I would say, is a lot more fast-paced. And news is different in certain media markets, but in the larger cities, I would say the top 10, it can be pretty crazy. And then as you get to #1, which is New York, I have friends who work in New York. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So when I started working in San Francisco, even though it was some news, mostly magazine shows, it was a little bit more relaxed. It's not, the professionalism is obviously still there, but it's not as crazy and as desensitized, I would say, as when I went down to LA. People were, you couldn't really read them. It was hard to read people because, especially the other news reporters, is because they've been in the business a lot longer than I have, and they had just thick skin, and they were desensitized to everything. And we reported on some crazy stuff in just the 3 short months that I was there.
And you have to go out on anything whenever it happens. I mean, you could be away for days.
Yeah, we went on, the longest one I went on was a couple days. And the craziest one, if I'm not repeating myself, the craziest one is when I went down to LA and we reported on a gang shooting. And it was pretty crazy simply because we got shot at. And I said, okay, that's pretty much it, I'm done. And so from there, came back up to California, or Northern Bay, and started my company, 12 Point.
All right. Tell us about the documentary.
Documentary it's pretty amazing because I wasn't looking for it. I'm in corporate video and looking to get out of corporate video and started producing some pretty creative things, which is great. I was looking for a good documentary, but this one wasn't it. And it's about religious persecution in the former Soviet Union.
Yes.
And it's dinner topic stuff. And I was like, well, most people say, well, how did you get a topic like that? Well, I was talking to a girl in my church and just hanging out, and you can actually go to church with somebody for a while and you finally get to know, hey, what's your story?
Yes.
And she goes, oh, I'm actually from Russia. And you would have never guessed because she doesn't have an accent. Well, she moved here when she was 5. So I said, as a nosy producer, you start digging. And I said, well, what was like practicing a faith of any kind when you lived there? Because she did live there during the Cold War. And she said it was brutal. It's absolutely brutal. She told me a quick story. She remembers when she was a kid, a family of 8, where the KGB was banging on their front door and her dad was screaming at everybody, go hide under the bed, because her dad was just a local small-time pastor. He's just a small pastor, small town, maybe, 100,000 people in this town, and that's it. Just a huge vicinity. And she said, you really need to talk to my parents. So after playing phone tag for a while, I talked to her parents, who live in Orange County, and I just went down to Orange County and I interviewed her dad, her grandfather, and a couple of family friends. I said, this would make a great documentary because their stories were horrific and how they survived it. Which was amazing. And
KGB's at the door solely because he was a pastor.
Solely because he was a pastor. You got to remember, anything, it's about militant atheism in a sense, because anything that opposes a government, they consider, a deviant. And so when you get that opposed to religion, which is the biggest block between a government and its people, it's militant. They actually deem it harmful to people. They deem it harmful to society. That's the definition of militant. And so when these people practiced anything that was outside of what the government wanted you to worship, because the government really wanted you to worship them, and they said, no, we're going to stay true to our faith. And if you walk that way from basically 1917 up to 1989 when the wall came down, because people were still put in either jail or the funny farm.
Right.
Because the government said, okay, if you believe in something outside of us, there's got to be something wrong with you.
Right.
And that's the way the Soviet government perceived religion. And so,
what were some of the experiences that you heard from these individuals?
Here's one. This lady who I'm interviewed, she was probably late 70s, early 80s. I interviewed her and her husband here in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. She remembers when she was a girl, probably 8 years old. Her sister was probably 10. Her dad was also a local, not pastor, but assistant in a church. And one day, the KGB shows up and just grabs him out of the house. Puts him in a chain gang. There's a bunch of people in a chain gang, and they have to walk 20 miles to this prison. Her sister freaks out because her dad's gone. She grabs a loaf of bread, the sister, and follows them in the snow for 20 miles because she wants her dad to have something to eat. Now you got to remember, these guys are walking in a chain gang. There's guards, guns, dogs, everything. So the whole 9 yards of, they even took shots at the girl. She's 10, 12 years old. She finally makes it to the prison. She watches her dad go inside, and these big gates close, and she's like, how do I get the bread to my dad? And she told me the story that her sister just simply threw it over the wall, hopefully that he would just get it. And she never saw her dad again. That was it. Done.
And these people are living here in the Bay Area.
They live here now. Mm-hmm. either through escaping or either through being exiled, because it was like the persistent widow almost, in a sense.
Yeah.
They said, let us out, let us out, let us out. They would just get kicked out.
And you heard these stories, and the documentary, it's called
Martyred in the USSR, Militant Atheism in the Former Soviet
Will you
Union.
talk more about it when we come back in the break?
Sure.
Okay. When we return, Kevin will tell us about this new documentary in more detail and how we can watch it, so don't go away.
One of the things that we're looking for, and will always be looking for, are more stories.
Welcome back. I want to just understand too, Kevin, that this Martyred in the USSR, it was actually birthed here in the San Francisco Bay Area, in San Francisco.
It was. I mean, the story came from a San Franciscanite. She was born in Russia, but she spent most of her time here in the Bay Area, and that's how I got the story, and that's a great way, for people in the Bay
because
Area.
we want to get involved. We all want to get involved. It was birthed here. We want to see this project go out throughout the world, because a lot of what you're talking about in the story are things that we are facing even today. But tell us about another one of your interviews.
Well, it's interesting. One of the first interviews that we got pretty much confirmed that we were supposed to do this documentary, because sometimes, you can walk down a road and God's like, nope, don't do that.
Right.
Been there. So one of the guys that we interviewed, who was actually not even on our schedule to interview, just kind of came by chance, his name is Vasily Vlasovich. This guy is from a small town in the Ukraine, and when he turned 17, he became a Christian. 18, by law, you're supposed to go to war. So it's World War II, and where he was, it was the Russians against the Germans. And he had to go off to war, but he refused to fight. And his camp commander pointed a gun at him 3 times, and they misfired all 3 times because he wouldn't fight. And he was thrown in jail, and he went through hell and back simply because he refused to pick up arms. He says, it's against my religion, it's against my belief. And through all these things that he went through, he said he received a prophecy while he was in jail. This guy shows up out of nowhere. He doesn't know him. He doesn't know where he's from. And this guy goes, my name is Alexander. I am a prophet, and I have a message for you from God. And Vasily's like, okay. And so Vasily said, the first thing he said is, don't worry about your time in prison, because it's going to get reduced twice. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison because he wouldn't fight, and they got reduced to 6 and then to 4. This prophet said, when you get back to your hometown, I'm going to tell you the name of the girl you're going to meet and marry, and she's going to know you. And it happened. When he got out of jail, he found his hometown. He got back to his hometown, found this girl whom he didn't know, got the name, married her, and he showed us a picture of her. She had passed away in that time. And then the third part, which blew us out of the water, was the prophet said, don't worry about everything that's happened to you and your people, because one day millions of people will know your story. Wow. And we're there filming, and we got 2 cameras on him. My cameraman was just like, he was like, this can't be true. So Vasily didn't speak English. His son, who was a little older than me, was translating for me. And so I'm the skeptical producer, so I lean over, his son's name is Peter. I go, hey, Peter, come on, how real is this? Is he just doing it for the camera? He goes, Kevin, you don't understand. There are 8 of us. We've heard this story since we were kids, boys, before you existed. And he goes, now here you are. And so I was like, okay, if that's not confirmation, then I don't know what is.
So how can we get involved?
Best way to do it is you can go to the website, which is martyredintheussr.com, as it's spelled. And one of the things that we're looking for, and will always be looking for, are more stories. Yes. Because not only in addition to the documentary, is we want to build a page where people can tell their stories, because it's a piece of history that's really being forgotten.
Yes.
The youth today, one of the interviews that we've done with the experts says the youth today in Russia have no idea that this story ever happened. They'll deny that it happened. Even some of the teachers who teach this stuff will deny, go, no, that didn't really happen. I'm like, there's so much evidence out there. So we'd love to hear people's stories ongoing, that if you went through it, whatever persecution, whatever faith, please let us know about it. And then there's great ways to get involved. You can donate. There's a donate button, because we're going to be doing many more things, because in addition to the documentary, we are doing educational pieces. We've had schools call us and say, hey, you know what, we'd really like to use the documentary as a teaching tool. So we were re-editing, and we want to do this without charging the school.
Right.
And so just a donation would help us facilitate that. So you can hit the donate button, and donations are tax deductible, which is a great thing.
And some volunteers.
Absolutely.
From time to time, you need that as well.
We definitely need people's time. You know, it'll help us out greatly.
I don't ever mean to compare what those individuals went through with life here. But do you ever think there might be, if we don't see a change in the way Christianity is viewed in America, that it could sometime be martyred in America?
You know what, it's interesting. If you really take a look at the stats out there, Christianity is probably one of the most persecuted religions that are out there. You take a look at the Middle East, you take a look at Iran. If people don't start stepping up and being a little bit more bold about their walk in Christ and who He is, it's going to slowly disappear. When I was a kid, we prayed in school. You know, I'm a Louisiana boy. We stood up, we prayed, and we said the Pledge of Allegiance too. We were patriotic to our country, but that's slowly being taken away.
Yeah.
And the more people who seem to stand up for their faith, the more that they're chastised, simply because those that chastise simply don't know. I've got friends. Most of my friends are atheists. I have no idea why. And I go, atheist? You're not an atheist. Atheist just means you don't know what to believe. That's really a lot of it. And I said, have you ever picked up the book and read it? No, I don't need to. So it's that type of ignorance, unfortunately, that's causing that you know, what goes around comes around aspect. And so if we don't start just talking more about God in whatever fashion you can, be it through a documentary, be it in your school, be it in your job, minister to someone, talk to somebody. My wife, she works in freight forwarding. She'll minister to people at her job, which I think is phenomenal. If we don't start doing more of that, we're going to see less and less of Christianity. And it's going to come back to around where our government's going to control how we think.
I'm sure you were a good news reporter, but this could be the project, basically, that was meant for you.
I believe so. I believe so. I think God definitely pulled me back out of LA. I think He's guided me into the right direction every time, even though I've gone kicking and screaming and not want to go. And when I take a look back, I'm like, you know what? He was right.
What message, we have less than a minute, what message would you like viewers to receive from this documentary?
Care. Even though it happened in the past, care. Care about God. I mean, I think Christianity is a great given birthright. Don't refuse it. Accept it. Embrace it. Don't sell it away. Really embrace what is out there, because it's an amazing thing, and I've seen God's miracles in my life, and I actually really want that for everybody else.
You know, Kevin, I'm personally thankful that you, a Christian, you have a production company here in the Bay Area. So we're kind of teaming together.
Bring it on.
Thanks for being with us. For more information about Kevin Gonzalez and 12 Point Productions, and to find out about his new documentary, Martyred in the USSR, visit www.12point.net or KTLN.TV. Remember, the KTLN is a donor-supported ministry, and we are thankful for the part you play in keeping this ministry ongoing. Thanks for being with us, and join us again next week.